Hi, I'm Paco Nathan at O'Reilly Media, and we're here at JupyterCon. It's a pleasure to get to talk with Jason Grout from Bloomberg. Jason, you're a software developer.
That's right.
Working in data science and related issues at
particularly on the Jupyter project, that's right.
Wonderful, wonderful. So tell us more. I want to drill into that and find out more about what Bloomberg's interest is in Jupyter and in data science, more so in general.
That's a good question. I think one thing about Bloomberg is that it's a tech company. It's focused on delivering financial analysis and data information to a couple 100,000 people around the world, leaders in the industry that are looking for information about finances and how the business world is doing. And you can imagine a lot of data comes with that. Over 100 billion market messages need to be analyzed and processed, and insight needs to be gleaned from these things. And that takes a tremendous amount of analysis, a tremendous amount of data science. And that's where Bloomberg comes in. That we offer this sort of market information and analysis to the customers to be able to make sense of all sorts of things that are going on in the world that could possibly affect business markets.
Is that 100 billion per month, per
100
week?
billion data messages are processed every day. Yeah, and millions of news stories. So it's a tremendous amount of information. And how do you make sense of that?
Right, yeah.
And that's the big key question that Bloomberg tries to address. And so data science in particular helps us to address that. Things from structured data like market information coming in, all the way to unstructured data like what's going on in Twitter, and can you analyze the sentiment that's happening on Twitter, or if a weather event in one part of the world, how does that affect a particular company in maybe another part of the world? Relationships that may not be so obvious, but data science can help us uncover and bring to our customers.
Excellent. So I can imagine then from those kind of cases, there's a lot of geospatial analysis, a lot of time series analysis.
Certainly.
Probably even getting into more like social network kind of
analysis. That's right, and natural language processing and all sorts of data science techniques that are applied to this huge amount of information. How do we glean insight out of this and give it to the hundreds of thousands of customers that we have?
Oh, fantastic. How does Jupyter fit into that then?
So Jupyter is an amazing project, an amazing ecosystem of a front end to help people make sense of this data and really interactively work with it. So we use Jupyter internally for analyzing this sort of data, and a lot of our clients use Jupyter as well to use the information we provide and analyze it and try to gain actionable insights from it.
Well, it sounds like it's in kind of almost in a layered view. There's the internal work with analyzing data, but then what's provided out to the customers, and then subsequent to that, the next mile, the customers are doing their analysis and their integration with Jupyter as well.
What we've seen is Jupyter is being used all across the industry, and not just in finance, and in many, many different disciplines that deal with scientific computation, and certainly at Bloomberg as well.
I can imagine that there are verticals that use Bloomberg, the data coming across, that are not specifically finance, but they're looking more for business insights, leading edge. What kind of, or could you describe some of the verticals they're involved in that perspective of data science?
As in industries?
Yeah.
So certainly government people. I mean, basically anybody that's trying to look at how to analyze a lot of information and how that's affecting the business world. Bloomberg is one of the industry leaders in presenting this information and helping gain insight from it.
Excellent. What kinds of technologies inside of the Project Jupyter in general, what specific kinds of technologies are being used?
There's a number of projects that Jupyter is specifically contributing because they're very interesting for us in our internal use, and also interesting in the ecosystem at large, particularly revolving around interactive data exploration. So, for example, we've invested heavily in the Jupyter Widgets project that allows you to interactively work with your data in a very seamless way. We have also invested quite a bit in the Jupyter Lab platform, which is the next generation Jupyter web interface. Enables you to take a huge amount of data, a huge amount of computation, and have it be able to work with a number of tools together to be able to do your scientific workflow, to be able to analyze the data.
Excellent. I think that for a lot of people who are mostly accustomed to Jupyter notebooks, looking ahead, what kind of different things would they be able to do then by using Jupyter Lab?
So Jupyter Lab enables, I think one of the big things that you expect out of Jupyter Lab is an extensible ecosystem that you can customize and you can form and fit to your own workflow. And so not only do you have a lot of the tools that people have come to depend on in the Jupyter Notebook, but you'll be able to invent your own tools and customize to your own workflow. A core principle in Jupyter Lab is its extensibility. And one of the key reasons why we wanted to invest in being able to develop Jupyter Lab and fund its development as well. We needed that extensibility. We wanted people to have a platform that they could build on.
Excellent. I was curious too, from what I've heard, Bloomberg has been contributing a lot to this project. How does that model work out? Are there people specifically working, or are you working primarily on Jupyter, or?
Yeah, there's a number of ways Bloomberg's contributed to the Jupyter ecosystem. One way is with time. I've been fortunate to be able to spend a large majority of my time working with the Jupyter community and working with the Jupyter projects in particular, things like the Jupyter Widgets project or Jupyter Lab. We also contribute resources, host meetings. We also contribute funding towards these projects. So really a multi-pronged approach to help the open source ecosystem grow here.
Excellent. I've had the opportunity to attend some meetups at Bloomberg, and just the community's support, finding a space large enough in downtown Manhattan and all. Yeah, that's excellent. Can you tell us a little bit more about looking ahead, some of the projects that you'll be focusing on?
Yeah, we're really excited about a lot of the developments in Jupyter Lab, of course. That keeps coming up. It's one of the big things that's coming out this year. And we're excited to see what the community does with this. One of the things we really wanted to do is support the open source community in developing and enhancing the scientific tools that we all use. Jupyter Widgets is certainly a project that has a bright future ahead of it. We plan on looking at dashboarding eventually, some sort of way to not only compute with the information as a scientist, but also present that information to others. So a lot of exciting things on the roadmap. We're looking at contributing in ways to run Jupyter in a more enterprise context, so with Kerberos and some authentication mechanisms for running in a multi-user environment. Really, we want to see the ecosystem grow, and we want to see the ecosystem succeed, and we're willing to invest time and resources and funding into that.
Are there particular programming languages within Jupyter that are more of a focus?
Python certainly has taken the financial world by the storm. So Python in particular is where the roots of this are coming from, but there's other languages as well that people are using, Fortran, Julia, R, etc. And we want to be an inclusive ecosystem, speaking from the perspective of the project as well. We want to be an inclusive ecosystem across many different languages and many different workflows.
I can imagine that some of these data services have a long history, and that there are some programming languages now that may even be easier to incorporate or include because of the range of environments that Jupyter supports.
We're really excited about some of the up-and-coming programming languages, but really there's I think a lot of untapped potential in Python as well, where we see a lot of people in the financial world moving, but not just the financial world, in the scientific ecosystem in general. And it's not so much the language. We want a tool that helps people in their workflow wherever they are. And I think Jupyter Lab in particular, and some of the other technologies out of the Project Jupyter, help people where they are and growing into places where they need to go.
I'm curious about when a customer's working with Jupyter, is that more of an individual workstation kind of perspective, or does it incorporate across teams and work groups, that kind of workflow?
I mean, I can speak internally that one of the things Jupyter enables is people to share the information and computation with others. And that's one of the values that we see in supporting this ecosystem. A quantitative finance researcher in Bloomberg might be talking with another team in Bloomberg that wants to analyze some data, and how do you share this information and insights between each other? And a Jupyter Notebook, for example, is a great way to share computation that's combined with narrative text that explains the procedure that we're going through and how to think about the procedure, an interactive widget that lets the user play with the data and see the results in real time. All of these things are great ways to share the computation and share the insights that are gleaned from it. And we've certainly seen that internally.
Excellent, excellent. Are there other open source projects that are complementary to what's going on with Jupyter? You mentioned about work to include Kerberos. I can imagine Docker's in the mix there too. Yeah. What's the kind of ecosystem, the larger ecosystem that you're seeing?
Yeah, there's a huge shift, I think, in scientific computation to using open source technologies and using them together. So certainly the languages that we've been talking about are open source, Python and R and Julia, and the libraries that are developed around those languages are mostly open source. And then a bunch of technologies that are involved in packaging this and presenting it to the users and really bringing it to the masses. Like you mentioned, Docker and a lot of the enterprise or large-scale deployments involve all sorts of open source projects from all around the ecosystem.
Excellent. And also I'm curious, for people who are interested in this area, and maybe they're in school right now, they'd like to work more in this kind of area, what advice, what suggestions for getting in the field would you have?
Yeah, I would say with any open source project, jump in and start contributing and start being part of the community. And I've been fortunate to be at Bloomberg where that's really encouraged, and of course as an academic person before I came to Bloomberg, that was a big deal, and I would encourage students as well. Anybody that wants to start being part of the community, the first thing is to just start being part of the community. Yeah, jump in, and we're more than happy and to welcome people to anything from writing code, which is sort of the most traditional way to contribute to the community, but there's been a number of people that have contributed documentation and tutorials and guides, and even just sharing with your friends and starting to use it. All of those things, I think, help the ecosystem to grow and thrive.
As far as going into data science, and particularly data science and finance, are there particular areas that a person could use as background that would be helpful?
Certainly mathematics is a pretty standard background for these sorts of things, but there's a number of tools out there, and a number of resources out there for learning machine learning, understanding data, understanding correlations in data, and what sort of insights you can glean from data, structured data, unstructured data. All of these sorts of things, I think, would help in breaking into the field.
It sounds like, too, with the scale of what you're talking about, and the kinds of analysis, bringing in data from weather, some other part of the world, looking at very sophisticated time series analysis, let's say, as an example. I can imagine that people wouldn't necessarily be coming from computer science. They might be coming from scientific fields.
That's right. Yeah, and that's one thing that we've really seen, is that the open source ecosystem really is about developing a community, and this community is very diverse. And we have people from all sorts of different fields that are collaborating together, bringing their own expertise to bear on problems, and working together to be able to advance the state of many different fields.
Excellent.
It's really an exciting world to live in. There's a lot of progress going forward, and I think the open source system and companies working with the open source system and communities and academics and everybody that's sort of growing this open source and open community for progress in these fields. It's really making the world a better place. It's a fantastic thing to be a part of, and I encourage anybody to be a part of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you very much.